You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today's episode is being released early in the schedule in order to get it out to you prior to the 2022 Ultraman World Championships happening this weekend, November 25th through the 27th. Let's get started and preview the athletes in the race. I am pleased today to welcome back two guests to the podcast that have been on previously. Sheryl Cobb is one half of the Cobb family that are the race directors of the Ultraman World Championships. I originally had Sheryl and her husband Dave on the podcast in Season 2, Episode 6 to talk about the race. Since then, they have not been able to hold a race in Hawaii due to COVID, but she is here today to preview the full field that they have arriving in Kona for the 2022 championships. And joining us today is the man with the stats, the raconteur for 515, Mr. Steve King. Welcome back, Sheryl and Steve.
Thanks for having us back.
What have you been up to? I know that you do a lot of work helping out with the Ironman World Championships. Can you tell us a little bit about your take on how that went this year by having the two races and how maybe that might have affected the local people and how the whole process kind of went off with the two races this year?
Sure. The races went off really well. It was very hard to put on 2 days of full Ironman World Championship races. Thank goodness we had a quote down day in between, but it was really just a day of resetting and getting ready for that second day. Overall, though, lots of great response from it. Community hit and miss on that one, but that's always the case with Ironman, and whether it's 1 day or 2 days. Ironman did do a lot of things to try and keep the community happy, kept the highway open on the northbound lanes, and just really worked with the community to try and make it a little bit easier for everybody to get around on race days. Overall, though, super successful. Really enjoyed our time with it. Glad it's over because there was a lot of stress leading up to having never done 2 days of racing at that distance before. You know, nobody had a template of how to make it work. So it was basically a huge, huge learning curve, but excited to have been a part of it and look forward to seeing what we come up with for next year.
And in your debriefing, did they talk about what the plan is for next year? Are they going to continue with the 2 days from now on, or is it still an open-ended situation?
The plan is to have it for 2 days again this next year. There's been a little bit of pushback from some community members, so I know they're still in negotiations with the county if we're going to be able to do 2 days, but that had been announced previously, so hopefully the county will continue its support of the event and let us have the 2 days again. I'd really like to see it. I'd really like to see the women have their own day.
Yeah, of course. And you also went to St. George for that championship. Is that correct?
I did. So that was even crazier because, 2 world championship events in 3 weeks and 3 world championship events in 7 weeks. I don't know what I was thinking when I scheduled that one, but St. George was awesome. It was a bit chilly, but great events. Biggest number of women athletes we've ever raced at one time at that distance, and then the biggest number of male athletes we'd ever raced at that distance at one time. So 2 hugely successful days of racing, and let me tell you, it was really nice because those were the short days.
and now you've got 3 days of racing coming up.
Yes, and super excited about having the race back. We've missed it so much that I'm just really thrilled to be able to welcome everybody back to the Big Island for the family reunion.
Yeah. And has anything changed in your race? Are you getting any course changes, or is everything kind of the way it was the last time you raced?
It's pretty similar to what we had in 2019. The only change is we did change Red Road a little bit. We did an out and back in 2019, and then we had to do a little out and back through Hilo. That was kind of ugly, and there ended up being a lot of construction on that road. So we changed Red Road. We're going to go a little bit further down Red Road. We found a road that will connect back up to the highway. So we're making a loop like we used to do. It's just a smaller loop than we had in previous years on Red Road. And then we're going to send them down on a little scenic out and back to the way they used to come out of Red Road down by Lava Tree State Park. And they'll get to make a U-turn. And if they pick their heads up for a second and look ahead of them, they'll be able to see the 30-foot wall of lava that crossed the road there that made us alter our course. So we wanted to put that little display on for them so they can see why we have changed what we've changed. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Steve in with us for this conversation. Steve, welcome back to the show. Great to have you again. I know that you've been busy as well. Tell us what you've been up to in the last little while.
Well, thank goodness we've had a lot of races come back to British Columbia, including the marathons. So I've been at those, and I was also just in Mexico for a 3-day ultra distance event there that was hosted by Van Dam Sanchez, who in 2014 was the youngest ever Ultraman finisher at 19 years of age, and here he is now hosting events. And he also puts on a non-stop Ultraman, which is, wow, something different as well. And in fact, the winner of that and holder of the world best is actually going to be with us on the Big Island for the World Championships coming up.
Well, let's get started on that. Let's start talking about these athletes that are coming to your race, Sheryl. Can you give us a quick breakdown of the athletes that are arriving this year?
Yeah, we've got a good group of athletes. I'm very excited. We have 30 men and 10 women, so a quarter of the field is women, which is great to see coming at the World Championships. Sometimes our course is a little intimidating to the ladies, but it's nice to see that number percentage growing and growing, and hopefully we'll continue to at some point get it to be 50-50. That would be pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 24 first timers and 16 returning athletes. Some of those athletes are coming back with a score to settle. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it'll be nice to see them actually finally achieve their dream of completing and finishing officially the World Championships.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that men's race field. Can you tell us what the breakdown of the age groups is first, Sheryl?
Sure. We have one athlete in the 20 to 29 division, 6 in the 30 to 39 division, 9 in the 40 to 49 division, and 14 in the 50 to 59 division.
Steve, I know you're always kind of on top of where these people come from. Can you tell us a little bit about the breakdown of the countries they'll be representing this year?
Sure. Well, Sheryl mentioned the 20 male athletes, but in the women's division, I think we got 5 in the 40 to 49, we got 4 in the 50 to 59, and we do have, if Diane Anderson finishes, she'll become the most senior female ever to have finished an Ultraman distance. And it'll be the same age as Dan Jensen. He was 67 and she is 67. So that's going to be interesting to see. But we've got the US, Canada, Sweden, Bulgaria, Argentina, Brazil, Spain, Australia, Israel, Colombia, Italy, Venezuela, South Africa. 14 countries all represented, and the UK.
And I saw that there was one lone Colombian in that field, and Sheryl, that is the youngest person in the field, and that's on the men's side. So can you tell us who's representing the youth in this race?
It's Jonathan Alejandro Rivas Venegas. And he goes by Alejo, and he will be our youngest athlete, and he's super fun. He did Ultraman Florida back in 2020, and I think he finished like 6th there. Just super nice guy, lots of good energy, and nice to see some youth coming to the sport as well. So excited to have him.
He did that MX 515 non-stop event earlier this year and set a world best. Not that there's been too many people who have done that, but he set a remarkable time, just over 26 hours, and he was well ahead of the next person. And interestingly enough, the winner in Mexico this year in the 3-day event was also a Colombian. So I think his name is Carlos Galvez. So I think we're going to see more and more Colombians wanting to get to the Big Island. So it's good that he's going to be there and taking on the challenge for his country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, in the 30 to 39 men's division, you said there were 6 competitors. I know one of them is JD Tremblay, because I met him when I was still the co-race director of Ultraman Canada. And he's actually going to be the guest on the next episode of the podcast. And he's recently done Epic Deca. Steve, I think you know a little bit about JD as well. Can you share a little more about him?
Yeah, he came to Canada and raced very well there, but then he knocked a couple of hours off the time that he did when he spent some time in Fresnillo in Mexico for the MX515 event there. So he's a keener, and I certainly think he could do very, very well. Again, if he could knock another couple of hours off, though, he could possibly be in the top 5, all being well, because he's certainly learned a lot, and he loves to race and he loves distances now.
Also in this category, we have Stephen Keller, and he might be one of the likely favorites as well for the race. I spoke to him on the podcast in season 2, episode 10, as an athlete in profile for Ultraman Arizona, where he then went on to win that race. And a number of the racers that are competing for the Ultraman World Championship this year are winners from their qualifying races. You were down at that inaugural Ultraman Arizona, Steve. So what did you think of how he raced?
He raced brilliantly. He certainly is, as you said, one of the pre-race favorites. He had a second in his first one in Florida. Then he won the second one in Florida. And then he won in Arizona, but there was no swim. And he has gone just inside 3 hours for the swim portion of the event. But he's a phenomenal rider and runner. So we can expect very big things of him.
Mm-hmm. Sheryl, who are the rest of the men in this age group? And please tell us any little anecdotes that you might have about any of these guys.
Well, it's actually a pretty competitive age group because you've got Richard Thompson, who is a past Ultraman Australia champion, as well as he won world championships here in 2018 when we had the lava year and had to take the course over the Saddle Road, which was our crazy year of tons of elevation, our modified course year. So he's probably going to be up there in the top 5, I would imagine, overall. You've got Kyle Ormerod, who is just a great character, and it's been fun to actually watch him improve his abilities in this distance. He did well in his first Ultraman Florida, but then came back and, really kicked it up a notch this past year in 2022. And just made some great improvements, and super great personality and really fun guy as well. Feng Lor, who will be joining us, he was a little bit farther back on the day 1 of Ultraman Florida, but hopefully he'll be able to get through our swim and our day 1 climbs. He was strong on day 2 and day 3, and once he gets past day 1, he'll be okay here. Ryan Rainier's got a lot of experience. He's crewed here. He's crewed at some of Epic 5 races as well. And he did very well at both Arizona and Florida this year. So I think Ryan will have a great race. And it's a very, very competitive age group.
Mm-hmm. Steve, do you have any of the numbers that go with these racers?
Well, yeah, I mean, when it comes to Richard Thompson, I think we could potentially see something unbelievably impressive. I mean, he has a very specific goal, which is to become the first person in the world to go inside 20 hours. And I mean, if you think about what that means, it means 6 hours, 40 minutes for each of the 3 days. So Sheryl and her team and us, we've got to move very quickly if he's on that sort of a pace. And he is certainly the man who owns the world best for an official Ultraman event as well, at 21:21. So certainly he has the capacity to go possibly inside 21 hours, but to go inside 20 is going to be something phenomenal. He's going to have to look at doing maybe a 2:15 to set up the swim, but he's got other great swimmers there. We can talk about them in a while, but his biking was phenomenal, as Sheryl saw on the tougher day 2 that they had in 2018. He just tore away and still did a remarkable overall time. And he can run too. He would anticipate going sub-7, and he would have to do, as I say, we'll have to find out after the first 2 days if he's on track. But this has been his goal now for a couple of years.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a flat looping course where he might have an advantage to do that sub-20. This is a challenging course.
It is, and Kyle Ormerod. Now, Kyle is a very good, strong biker, and certainly did extremely well, as Sheryl mentioned, when he moved up to third place in Florida. Ryan Rainier, in fact, we did start the swim in Arizona, and Ryan Rainier was, in fact, the leader after 2 kilometers. And sadly for him, that was the end of the day. We had to haul everybody in due to the conditions out there. But he, amongst others, there will be Barry Berg, who's in the 50-plus division. He would be someone else to watch out for on the swim. And, of course, Rob Gray. Rob Gray, in fact, beat Richard Thompson the last time they swam together. And Rob Gray has been someone who's been first, second, and third at the Ultraman World Championships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's move on to that next age category, and Sheryl, maybe we can start by you introducing them by name, and then we'll pick out a few to highlight some information on each of them as well.
Sure. The first one would be Asparu Borisov, and he's from Bulgaria, so he's our first Bulgarian athlete to have finished an Ultraman race, and he will be the first Bulgarian athlete to compete at World Championships, and hopefully does very well here. He was successful at Ultraman Florida and then crewed at Ultraman Arizona. So I think he's learned a lot this year as far as the to-dos and the not to-dos when it comes to racing. Sebastian Lefebvre is from Canada. He just did Ultraman Canada, and he'll be racing here with us for the first time, and that's exciting. He'll have on his crew Brad Sawa, the race director for Ultraman Canada, and his girlfriend, and Sebastian's girlfriend, and his son. And yeah, so it should be fun for him. Jeremy Couch is a man who's here to settle the score. He attempted the race a few years ago and did not complete it. So I know he's on a mission, and it'll be fun to see him do it. He was up in Canada, and he was in Arizona as well, crewing this year. So I think he's also learned a few more lessons, and hopefully he's got some things in his back pocket to help him get through that swim, which it was really a hard swim for him the last time he was here. So hopefully he'll be able to put that demon to rest. And we have Rodrigo Vasconcelos. He goes by Vasco. He is a great athlete and will be doing well, as expect him to be pretty highly placed, I would think, among the men.
Yeah, he actually has just done, I think it was a 9:18 in Italy. So he has improved in the last couple of years, and I think we can watch out for him in terms of being amongst the biggest out there. We've got also, someone like Borisov, the gentleman from Bulgaria. One of the problems for some of the guys is going to be their swims, as Sheryl said, and followed by a really tough bike on day one. And so he has gone just inside 5 hours for the swim portion before, and that was a lot calmer than sometimes it can be on the Big Island. So we'll see how things unfold. Jeremy Couch, as Sheryl mentioned, wants to come back and finish what unfortunately he wasn't able to do the last time he was on the Big Island, and he has crewed as well, and he was with us at earlier races this year. And so I think you've got people who are there to complete and compete. You know, some are there to try and finish the event because they're so honored to be at the World Championships and to have qualified. Others obviously want to do very well in their age division or overall.
And then Asir Deleuze will be here. He raced up in Canada and Florida, and he's coming with his family to crew for him again. Then we have Rob Gray, who is a past champion here and in Florida. And it's been fun to watch Rob's development with this distance and see how he's done with it. John Grail, who's from Canada, I'm not very familiar with him, as he did the race last year when it was a Canadians only race. But I think he's a pretty good cyclist from what I understand.
Very good.
John has difficulty on the run portion of the event, but my goodness, you should see him on the bike. He could really threaten almost anybody on the bike out there. And when you've got, as I mentioned, a few others that we've already discussed there that are phenomenal cyclists, a lot's going to come down to pacing. How much are they going to put out on day one to be able to fly over the longer day on day two?
Yeah, I hope to see him doing some great times out there on the day one and day two courses. And Randy Latza, is also a score to settle here. He had a similar situation to Jeremy where he wasn't able to make that day one cutoff. And so I know he's back with a vengeance and had a great race in Florida and is really in shape and been doing some other races. I got to see him in May in St. George at the Ironman World Championships and just really fit and has made this his mission and his goal for the year to put this, to check that box of completing the World Championships. And Shane Mascarin, met him briefly when he was here crewing at the Epic DECA. And I think just a good competitive men's 40 to 49 field as well.
Shane Mascarin, for instance, I know he's going to be happy to be there and be involved because some of these guys, we've got one gentleman in the field we'll be discussing in a while who is trying to do something pretty unique. We've had about a dozen athletes who have done 3 of these Ultraman family events in 1 year. So we've got a gentleman who's going to be attempting to do all 4 this year, and that's going to be exciting to see. And then you've got someone like Randy Latzer, who's crewed for his wife as well as for others, and he's coming back to the Big Island to hopefully get to that finish line. So we've got a lot of stories of reasons why people are there. And it's also wonderful when you look at the crews to see who are the alumni that are coming back to support and others who come to take a look and see what this is all about because they are thinking of getting on the start line sometime in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know with Jeremy, and he was at Ultraman Canada this year, and he was crewing Ayoko. And she, I think, is planning on applying for Ultraman Hawaii as well, or maybe already has for next year, along with Makoto. And so those guys all got along great. I would suspect that he would come back and crew again next year for her if the situation arises in that case.
And she's crewing for him this year.
Oh, she is crewing for him. Okay.
Yeah, Aiko's crewing for him.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's a really good field, a really strong field. As you said, John Grail, I got to watch him race at Ultraman Canada, and just maybe to see him going up against like the Rodrigos and Rob Gray is going to be a real battle in that division. Oh, and one of the things I did want to mention is I know a couple of the people, they do their fundraising and support other events while they're doing these races and do some fundraising. And I believe that Rob Gray and Shane Mascarin both have things that they are supporting. Steve, are you aware of what's going on there?
Well, men's mental health, I think, is what Shane is probably supporting out there. I know he's done that before, and I'm not sure what Rob Gray will be supporting this year. Yeah.
Shane, when he was on the podcast in episode 4 of season 2, he was talking about how he also does, along with mental health, he also does support dogs for people in the community. And I know that Rob Gray is, in the past, he's been a CAF fundraiser. So I thought maybe he was attaching one of those to this race as well.
Yeah, that would be fantastic because they've done so much work, and we've had the honor of having Bob Babbitt with us, of course, who's one of the founders of Challenged Athlete Foundation. And I don't think that Bob and Heidi are going to be joining us this year, though, unfortunately, Sheryl. I heard he was heading off to Germany for a major function, so that's unfortunate.
Yes, and I just saw him in St. George, and both him and Heidi apologized profusely for that bad scheduling.
Well, he does a great job at reporting on the event, but the athletes do that as well. That's a wonderful thing. During the course of the event, social media is bombarded with wonderful stories about what's happened to the athletes, and their crews do an amazing job in keeping the world informed. And hopefully we'll have Facebook Live and other streaming services going on.
Yes, Jen will be in charge of our social media again, Jen McVeigh.
Yeah, she always does a great job. Maybe you want to move on to our next age category for the men. And since it's such a large category, maybe we'll break this one down a little bit more and maybe introduce us to the younger people in the category, the 50 to 52-year-olds first.
Okay, so the 50 to 52-year-olds would be starting off with Shane Duffy, who raced this year up at Ultraman Canada. I believe he's done some of the Australia events in the past as well. He's pretty strong athlete, will do well. I think he'll do very well here, and he's got a great crew that'll be supporting him.
Yes, so one of the things about Shane Duffy, he and his friend Miguel and Madrid Lopez, they got together, they raced together, they've crewed and supported each other, and their goal was to end up being on the Big Island together and racing the World Championships, and they both qualified to be able to do that. So we're thrilled. He came 7th here at Ultraman Canada, and he's got a great team as well, and I think he'll be bringing the same crew with him to race on the Big Island.
Yeah, so next up is Miguel Madrid Lopez, Shane's friend, who they raced together in Australia. Miguel qualified this year at Ultraman Arizona, and so it'll be great to have him joining us here. And then Ariel Gorga, who raced in Canada in 2019. He had a pretty strong race. He was hoping to race with his friend Ishmael. They had quite the bromance going on in Ultraman Canada, but unfortunately Ishmael wasn't able to get some time off work to be able to join us, so that didn't work out. Then also in that 50 to 52 age range, we have Alessandra Medeiros, who's raced here before a few times, and also in Florida. Then we have Armando Armelini, who is racing here for, I think, his 3rd time, and is also trying to be the first person to finish all 4 Ultraman events in 1 year. So he is going to be doing El Plan Cuatro is the official title. And we're excited to have him and can't wait to see him make that 4th finish line as an official finisher. And then we have Olaf Berg, goes by Ollie. Quite the athlete. He's been racing here a few times, and just saw him in the beginning of October. He was here for Ironman World Championships, and he's also done Badwater and a bunch of long distance races. Quite an accomplished athlete. And he rounds out our 50 to 52 year olds.
Yeah, I think he's quite the ultra marathoner at this point, Steve. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what he does.
Well, yeah, as you said, he did Badwater, and he's also done, there's an ultra tri in Sweden, 615 kilometers. He's done that as well. So I think he's a keener, and I think he can handle the day one. I think, again, there's going to be a struggle for some people. We talk about Miguel Madrid Lopez. Well, he went just under 5 hours previously. So one of the things for some of the guys on the Big Island has been the fact that because they know they've got that 90 miles ahead of them, if they've never been there before, some take what I would consider just a little too long in the transition area. We've seen that where literally we had a couple of people inside a few years ago with less than 10 seconds to wrap up the 12 hours, and they just made it in time. So, I mean, it's neat to talk story about that afterwards, but it's pretty scary in the dark when you see the lights and they make that final turn and there's just a few seconds to go. And I always get worried when someone's spending maybe 20 to 30 minutes in the transition after doing maybe a 5 to 5.5 hour swim. So I certainly hope the crews are well aware and that they push their athlete to just get out there and pedaling as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like these guys are ticking off a lot of the country boxes for us as well, with Shane from Australia, Miguel from Spain, Ariel from Argentina, Alessandro from Brazil, Armando represents Italy and Venezuela. So they're really ticking off all the boxes there. Alessandro's actually done the UB 515 back in 2021. So there's another one that has multiple 515 experience.
Yeah, he did a 3:05 swim, so I don't see him having any problems whatsoever. Barry Berg of Canada is another one to watch out for, especially on days 1 and 2, where I suspect he'll be right up there, maybe in the top 3 or 4, because he's got a very strong swimming background. He's done a 2:22 in Canada when he led the field, and he led right through to take the victory overall.
Yeah. Well, let's start rolling into those senior 50-year-olds then. The remaining people in the 50 to 59 category age from age 54 to 58. And I know one of your favorites is in that age category, Sheryl. So let's start off there and tell us who's remaining in the 50 to 59 category.
So we have the Juan and only Juan Craveri. who is the one and only person who has done each of the Ultraman branded events that we've had. So he is 54 and coming to us from Argentina again. And I don't even know how many times he's been here, but he comes pretty regularly. And it's always great to have him. He lives to get to day 3, just suffers through those first 2 days just so he can get to that run. So it'll be nice to have him back with us again. And then we have Luis de Riba Hernando, who raced in Ultraman Florida this year. And he'll be joining us for the first time on the Big Island, as well as Michael Morrissey, who's also 54 and raced at Ultraman Florida, joining us for the first time from Ultraman Florida this year. And then Brian Fredley, who's coming back. He's been here a couple times before. He raced, he was supposed to race at Florida this year, but he had an injury and wasn't able to race, but he crewed for Ryan Rainier. So this time they decided that they wanted to race together, and that'll be fun to have both of them out on the course together.
Well, I think Brian Fredley, if he's on form, because a couple of times he hasn't been too well, and he does some great coaching, some great crewing. He's an excellent swimmer as well. He's done a 2:48. I think that was like 5 or 6 years ago on the Big Island as well. So he could have a very, very good start to his performance. And I certainly wish him well. I hope he's one of those people who he gives back to the sport in so many ways, and you'd like him to have a really perfect 3 days put together. You've got others to watch for. We talked about Alessandro Medeiros as well. I see him as being someone who could be amongst the top half dozen overall. I certainly hope that's the case. Mike Morrissey, I think, would be very happy to enjoy the time being on the Big Island, being at the World Championships. He is privileged. He's got Sarah McClarty as his coach. I think she may be coming over to embrace the event as well. In terms of there are people who have coaches who come with them, and people who have their coaches sitting back home and don't necessarily understand, or maybe they've been there for Ironman, but this is a whole different set of circumstances that you can see go on around the Big Island, and over 3 days it makes a big difference. So some people have their families with them and make a holiday out of it, and other people come, they're very, very serious. They've got a tight group of buds and coaches and fellow athletes who they're there to be on the ball 24/7 or 12 for less than 12 hours, obviously, in the form of someone like Richard Thompson maybe, but they're there to perform.
Absolutely. And one of those guys that may have made the transition from taking this as a serious race to just completion is also in this age group. Sheryl?
We have Gary Wang, who is coming here to going to complete his 20th consecutive Ultraman World Championships.
That's
insane. Pretty amazing. Yeah. He started off as a kid doing this, and now he's in his 50s. It's kind of crazy. We also have Howie Nordstrom, who's joining us again. Howie was with us in 2019 and also did Ultraman Canada in 2019. So it'll be great to have him back on course again. Barry Berg, as Steve has already mentioned. And then Adam Grant will be joining us. He's raced a few times with us, and he also raced in Florida and in Arizona. This year he raced Arizona. So it'd be nice to have him.
Yeah. And a couple of those people that you mentioned have been on the podcast. So I'll just mention that for listeners that want to go back and learn more about these great athletes, like Juan Criveri. He was in season 2, episode 5, and he gives some great advice in his episode. So anybody that wants to move up to this 5:15 distance should definitely listen to that episode. And I thought it was interesting. He listed his occupation as master and commander.
We had some good entries this year for occupations.
Yeah. And Barry Berg, who I got to meet through Ultraman Canada, he was the athlete in profile for the in season 1, episode 9, and he's got some interesting stories as well. And Gary Wang, who you mentioned doing his 20th, he was in season 2 of episode 6 as my Ohana guest. And so those guys are all in the library for any of the listeners that want to go back and hear more about those particular athletes, as are some of the others that will be coming up. So Steve, what do you know about some of these other guys in the 50 to 59 that will interest our listeners?
Perhaps someone like Howie Nordstrom could surprise. He hasn't surprised us before in the fact that we know he's a solid performer and he has also crewed. And I think he could be a sort of a dark horse. Again, another one who could be amongst the top half dozen in the men. But when it comes to overall, I know we're going to get to the women, but I think it's important to realize that just as we saw in Canada, where we had women dominating with 4 in the top 5 and
Right.
1 and 2 and 4 and 5, literally the top male was in 3rd place. We've got such an incredible women's field amongst the 10 women that are competing that it's hard to say. When I'm saying top half dozen, I'm potentially saying the top half dozen amongst the men. So that could be the top 10 overall. So we'll see how things unfold. I'm excited. I think this is the best field that I've been at, and I've seen some incredible athletes over the years. So I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that it's got some really solid world-class athletes that are taking part.
And definitely that is happening on the women's side. That's where the top of the field is with these pro athletes. So maybe we get started onto the women's side then. And Sheryl, can you introduce us to the athletes in the female 40 to 49 category?
My pleasure. These ladies rock. So we're going to start out with Antonina Reznikov, who comes to us representing Israel. She is the current Ultraman Florida champion. She had a great race there. Her day 1 and day 2, she was not in first place, but she was able to run herself into the win. Very, very strong runner. So it'll be great to see her out here and see how her performance pans out. I'm excited. I'm very excited about the women's race, actually. And then we have Leanne Cave, who is our pro woman coming into us. She's a retired pro, but she's our first Ironman world champion to come and race with us on the women's side. So we're very excited to have her join us. She did well in Canada, had a great learning experience there. Finished second to Amy Robitaille, who was just incredible little spark plug of a champion there. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, if I could just interject there for a second, Leanne is one of those people that's been on the podcast as well in season 1, episode 8, as a Ultraman Canada athlete in profile. And for her, this is the big one. Like, she has 4 world triathlon championships at the various different distances, and she wants this 5th one. She really wants this one.
Yeah, well, she's going to have her work cut out, even though, I mean, she is a phenom, and she did a 2:41 swim here at Canada, and that led the way for all the athletes, whereas Antonina, for instance, has done a 3:09, but she is a very strong biker and a runner, and she came second overall at Ultraman Florida, as Sheryl was saying there, and Leander was second, as Sheryl said, to Amy Robitaille. So as a learning experience for Antonina, by the way, because we're going to be talking shortly about the lady who owns the world best. But Antonina has actually gone also inside 23 hours for an Ultraman distance event in Israel. She's very well known there. She's won Ultraman, which is their Ironman distance event. She's won their Ultra event there as well. And she came second when she did Ultraman. So she is someone who would love to get, at the very least, on the podium at this World Championships.
Certainly, yeah. Well, let's keep going down this line of great women, Sheryl.
Then we have Jamie Harris. She'll be joining us for the first time here on the Big Island. She did Ultraman Arizona earlier this year, and she's done Ultraman Florida a few times, and I believe is a 2-time champion there in Florida. And she's just a very strong athlete. Think it'll be a great experience for her as well. We have Karen Woodward, who's coming to us. She also did Ultraman Florida as her qualifier. And then rounding out the 40 to 49-year-old category is Meredith Terranova, who did Ultraman Florida way back in 2014, I believe, the first year, and has been to Hawaii with us several times since then. And it'll be nice to have her. She's a phenomenal runner as well. So it'll be great to see how that all pans out when it comes to day 3.
Yeah, and she came second in Florida as well. So she's in good form and looking forward to the event, of course.
So all of these women have come first or second in qualifying races or other 5:15 distance races. So the field is going to be wide open as to who takes any of those podium spots, I think.
And I think sorry to interrupt you there. I just think it's also important to remember that Jamie Harris, she really struggled on the run portion of the event in Arizona, but a gutsy effort for her to take time out and then get back onto the course and get to that finish line. So whatever it takes, I think she'll make her way through to that finish, but she could be a big challenger as well.
Yeah. So Steve, maybe just give us some more of the impressive stats of these ladies that you're aware of.
Well, when we look at the next age group, of course, you got Dee Griesbauer in that age group in the 50-plus division, and she is the one who is holds the world best in an official Ultraman family event, and she stunned us all because when we were looking at the World Championships, you had Amber Montfort, who had set the record, had done a 24:07 before, and so we were hoping that we would see a female go sub 24 hours, and then in Florida a couple of years ago, she not only went through 24 hours, she went through 23 hours. And so we were stunned at that performance. And she led the field, men's and women's fields, for day 1 and day 2, and came in second overall. So people like Stephen Keller were a bit shaken up by that.
Yeah, well, let's continue on with the women in the 50 to 59 category then.
So we've got Dee, who Steve just spoke about, who's just an incredible athlete, has a strong background in the sport and knows what she's doing and has been doing lots of training. And so I think it's going to be exciting to watch her race against some of the, against a little bit younger athletes, but also against some of the ones in her same age group. Tara Norton's joining us again from Canada. Tara is a champion here, and so it'll be nice to have her back. I think, I think it's just going to be so exciting to watch these women, because I think there's a handful of them that can be duking it out for that top women's spot, and maybe even in the top 10 overall. So it is going to be very exciting.
And Tara's a 2-time winner, is she not, at your race?
She is, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. She won in 2018 and 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then Shannon Callies is joining us. She's here with a score to settle. She came here in 2018, our year of the crazy climb on day 2, and wasn't able to make the cutoffs on that second day. So I know she's got that one to, again, that demon to slay for her. So it'll be nice to have her back joining us. And then we have Fiona Semalink coming back to join us. She's been here several times. She's raced in Arizona. She's raced in Florida. I know she's looking to do Canada at some point in time. No, she's done Canada. She did it in 2019.
She's done Canada, yeah.
Yeah.
She's done 6 in total, I believe, now.
So it'll be nice to have Fee joining us along with her husband Hans on her crew. And it's just a really strong women's field, which is so fun to see.
It is. And when you look at Tara Norton, a 2-time world champion, you look at Dee Griesbauer, it's hard to believe that these two athletes are in their 50s, and they're both been pro triathletes as well, with great resumes at iron distances. So, and Dee, of course, is one of the commentators that we often hear. When you're sitting back home, it's great to hear her, because she has a lot of knowledge, a lot of years, and a lot of miles under her to take on these challenges. So it's wonderful that she's moved up to the ultra distances here. Of course, Fiona, it's great to see Fiona, because she has struggled in a couple of them, and a very courageous lady, because one of her first ones was in Florida, and she had a bike accident then that just really tore her up. Literally, she had some major struggles after that for a while, but just loved coming back and time again. And we are thrilled that she'll be back on the Big Island for this one. But I would see that Dee and Tara, they're going to be battling right up there with Leander, with Antonina. And so with Shannon, I would love to see her finish this one, because there was some major disappointment because it was such a tough day out there that day too. There were half a dozen people who finished anywhere from like 12 hours and 2 minutes to 12 hours and 15 minutes. So it's wonderful that you've got some of them coming back and saying, okay, I'm going to give this another go because I know I can get around the Big Island and go sub 12 each of those 3 days.
Yeah, and that leaves us with just one woman left in the field. And Steve, you talked about her a little bit in the opening. Let's talk about Diane. Steve, what do you got about Diane, and what's it going to mean for her to get to the finish line, do you think?
Well, I think she's got a lot of impetus going for her. I mean, we got to see a race in Florida, and she started off very, very well with a 4:14 swim, and finished all 3 days and looked fairly comfortable. She had a good crew. They were sort of friends and family that were with her, and at 67, it's not an easy thing to do. And again, I would say that the best thing she can do would be to, once she's completed that swim, get going. And just keep pedaling, because in the dark, when it's often quite cold later on and windy, and it gets dark early going up to Volcano Park, and once you're through that day one, I think then you settle in. There could be a little rain early morning on day 2, and she's not the biggest of persons, but she's got a big heart, and I really see and hope that we're looking for her to finish comfortably on that day 3, because I think she will have it. If she gets through day 1 and 2 safely in terms of time, I think she has what it takes to get to the finish line and set a new age barrier for women and up the ante to having a 67-year-old female at the finish.
Well, I hope she's listening to this podcast and has listened to what you've just given her for advice, because that is some sage advice from an ex-Ultraman himself and a man who's watched many of these races on the Big Island. So hopefully she takes that to heart. Sheryl, do you have anything to add about any of these other ladies?
No, I'm excited to see Diane. We've had some other women in the 60 plus age category, one of them being a local resident, Wendy Miner. Who did it at 65 and actually was the fastest 65-year-old on our course here on the Big Island. So it'll be nice to see Diane try and take that on, and hopefully she's able to, be successful and match Wendy's time, or at least just get the completion so that she set the new bar as far as the age category and get that 67 as the new benchmark of what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in order for that to happen, she has to do, 33 hours, 39 minutes, I believe, when Wendy set that time. That was in 2010. And will Wendy be joining us as part of the team?
I think she'll be around at some point. I'm not exactly sure yet.
I look forward to it. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. And good luck to you, Sheryl, Dave, and your whole team, Jane, and everybody out there for putting on this race. It's been a while since you've had the opportunity to do so. I know that you said it's been a bit of a harder time getting it together this year after not doing it for a while. So good luck with that. And I'm sure getting the whole Ohana back together again for the family reunion is going to be very special on the Big Island. I look forward to seeing the finishes and some of the stories that come out of this race, because as we've been talking about, not only is it going to be competitive, but there's going to be a lot of people that are meeting up again for the first time in 3 years after COVID. And it's going to be a very special occasion, I think, on the Big Island this year.
Yes, I feel super blessed and super grateful that David and I have the opportunity to host the family reunion here. And we're just really looking forward with our team to welcoming everybody back and really highlighting the beauty and the majesty and the magic that is this spectacular island. So look forward to having everybody, and just can't believe we're just a few short days away from it. So everybody has safe travels, and we'll see you here.
That's great. Well, thank you guys both for coming in and doing the preview. I'm sure the listeners are listening on the plane ride over to Hawaii and getting all the information they need about their fellow competitors.
Thanks, Larry.
Excellent. Well done.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.